Hello, happy day to all you kiddos, both big and small.
Thanks for joining me as we continue to celebrate Earth Day.
Ribbit. Do you know what that is? If you guessed a frog, you guessed correct.
I'd like to share with you about the life cycle of a frog. Did you know they start their life out underwater? They start out as eggs, also known as larvae. Soon after the eggs or larvae are laid in the water, they start to hatch into tadpoles. They look almost like a fish. But then they start growing legs and they become froglets. They're still underwater at this time. And soon they become adult frogs. Their lungs are developed and they can breathe and live outside the water. Did you know there's another name for this life cycle? It's called metamorphosis. Isn't that a cool word? Metamorphosis. Toads are actually a species of frog, and they're both called amphibians because they were hatched underwater and had to develop their lungs so that they could live outside the water. A salamander is an amphibian also. Frogs and toads play an important role in nature. They eat insects. Do you know some of the differences between a frog and a toad? Well, first off, when a frog's eggs are laid, they're laid in clumps. And when a toad's eggs are laid, they're laid in somewhat of a line. Isn't nature awesome and interesting? Some of the other differences are frogs are wet and slimy, and they tend to live near or in water. And toads are bumpy and dry, and they tend to live in gardens or flower beds, and the bumps are referred to as warts. Some people are afraid they're going to get warts if they touch a toad, but that's not true. Toad's road code. The toad wore a coat and a big smiley grin, and a little bow tie nestled under his chin. His home was a hole at the side of the brook. It was neat, it was tidy. Come and take a look. The toad was a traveler, and he liked to roam all over the marshes surrounding his home. But one day he thought, I think I shall wander to visit my cousin who lives way out yonder. From his cozy toad hole, he skipped and he hopped with a nice gooey cake, which he never once dropped. He whistled a tune as he bounced and he bopped to the road at the end of the marsh where he stopped. How diddly-do will I make it across with neither myself nor the cake getting squashed? But I'm due at my cousin's for afternoon tea, so how hard can it be? I mean, seriously? So straightening his tie, he set off at a pace. With a hop, skip, and a jump, and an admirable grace, he launched himself into the first lane he saw, and met with a terrible ear-splitting roar. Yikes! Went the toad, leaping out of his skin, as he covered his ears at the terrible din. Frightened, he flattened himself to the road. Goodness, what was that? Did something explode? No, it was only the sound of a car, which passed him close by and zoomed off to afar. The toad, though, had been given a bit of a start, and lay in the road with his hand on his heart. How diddly-do will I ever manage to cross the next lane without any damage? But I'm due at my cousin's for afternoon tea, so how hard can it be? I mean, seriously? So he gathered together his wits and his cake. He straightened his tie and proceeded to take a very deep breath, and then a hop, skip, and a jump to the very next lane, where he met with a bump. Up in the air went the cake and the toad. Splat went the cake as it squished on the road. Yikes! Went the toad, landing safe on the bank. Startled and shaken. What was that? A tank? No, not a tank, just a really big truck, which the toad was glad that he had managed to duck. The cake, though, had taken the brunt of the wallop and lay on the road in a big gooey dollop. My cake, wailed the toad as the truck flew on by, but he brushed himself down, then he straightened his tie, and picking up all that remained of his cake, he carried on to his cousin's small house by the lake. How do you diddly do? Said the toad. I'm so glad to see you. And goodness, it showed. Come in, said his cousin. Sit down if you're able. We'll have us some nice gooey cake at the table. The toad sat with his cousin, a frog, and they nattered of frog and toad things and of family matters. Then finally their chat came around to the road and how to cross safely the road safety code. Toad road code. Stop at the drop. It's too dangerous to hop. Look for things wheeled. Better keep your eyes peeled. Listen all around. You can hear any sound. If there's nothing that you can see or can hear, then hop right across. You have nothing to fear. The toad thanked his cousin and ate some more cake and finally looked at his watch. It was late. Well, thanks for the tip and the cake and the tea, but I'd better be going now, seriously. The frog gave the toad a hug and his jacket and the last piece of cake in a brown paper packet. Remember the code, he said with a wave, as homeward the toad hopped, feeling happy and brave. Soon, sure enough, the toad came to the place where cars and big trucks and more dangerous things raced, so he tried to remember his cousin's advice. Here goes, said the toad, and he reminded himself twice. Stop, look, and listen, the toad's cousin had said. So, mopping droplets of sweat from his head, he stopped at the curb, cupped his ear, and then watched. And when all was clear, he hopped safely across. Hooray, laughed the toad in delight and relief. Then he stuck out his chin with that tie underneath, which he straightened once more so it didn't look funny, and bounced all the way home just as brisk as a bunny. How diddly happy I am to be back, said the toad as he hung up his coat on the rack. He loosened his tie and he said loudly, yawning, I think I shall visit again in the morning. The toad wore a coat and a big toothy grin, and a little bow tie nestled under his chin. He lives in a brook by a marsh near a road, which he crosses quite often, all thanks to the code. Can you remember the code? Toad road code. Stop at the drop. It's too dangerous to hop. Look for things wheeled. Better keep your eyes peeled. Listen all around. Can you hear any sound? If there's nothing that you can see or can hear, then hop right across. You have nothing to fear. So this is all in celebration of Earth Day, which is on the 22nd of April, but we're celebrating it a few times. So this is just a little craft that I made out of a small paper plate. I folded it in half and then I cut it like that, folded it in half, made some big old eyes, colored it green with the marker crayon, and I drew inside and just made a little puppet just for fun. And then I did a couple other crafts because I know there's all ages of kids out there. A paper bag, a lunch bag. Do you have a lunch bag? You can make a puppet. I just colored this one. Rub it, rub it. You can be as creative as you want.
I just wanted to give you some ideas of some activities that you could do. And hopefully you could find some of these things at home so you can do some of them. This one is made from an egg carton. And if you use the end of the carton, it seems to work better. If you use the two end ones, they seem to work better for this. And I just taped it together, and inside I taped a piece of cardboard, colored it red. One side was red already on mine. And then I just took some of my scraps from my paper plate and made the eyeballs. And then I drew the shapes of the feet and cut them out. And there's my little frog. And this one's a paper plate. It looks better when it's sitting down on the table and holding it up like this, but that's just a frog made out of a paper plate, and I covered it with green tissue paper. But these are your hands. So trace your hands and cut them out for the feet. Or if you're too little to do that, have mommy or daddy help you. And you can always color your paper. If it's white, you can always color it green. And you can always color a paper plate green. If you don't have a paper plate, you could always cut a circle out of a piece of paper or cardboard. You know what I always say, be creative and be resourceful and use what you got. This next one I think might be my favorite. Just take a couple old lids off of some jars. They can be the same size or they could not be the same size and fit inside one another. Either way is going to work because I've tried them both. And guess what? So that's two lids. And then I taped them together. And then I covered them in glue and covered them in tissue paper. But you could do that a whole variety of ways. Maybe you've got masking tape you could cover it with and then just color it. Ask your mom what she's got that you might be able to do this with. So it's just two lids. Rivet. My shirt says reduce, reuse, and recycle. Let's save the earth. I want you to enjoy the earth. I'm a little frog, slick and green. Once I was a tadpole, as you have seen. Then I grew some strong legs while swimming about. And now I'm a frog, hooray, let's shout. Ribbit. Or there's this one. Tadpole, tadpole, swimming in my pail. Big round head and wiggly tail. Someday soon 4 legs will sprout. And then, small frog, you'll hop right out. Tadpole, tadpole, swimming in my pail. Big round head and wiggly tail. It's been so much fun hanging out with you. Thanks for joining me. I will see you again soon. In the meantime, remember, each and every one of you are truly precious and you are so very loved.